Look at this. 575 horsepower, 175 mile an hour top speed. Oh, jeez. Is it covered in plastic? No, carbon fiber. I guess it is the carbon series. Mauser. Okay. Oh, the verbal when it changes gears. Welcome to Hoovie's Garage, the dumbest automotive channel in all of YouTube. And this is my wife's driver, a 2017 Range Rover supercharged long wheelbase. And I have a major problem with this thing, and it's sort of why I'm getting rid of it. It's been too reliable. It's kind of frustrating because I buy this thing certified pre-owned with the warranty, hoping to do a repeat of Daddy Doug DeMuro from years ago, buying a Land Rover and just fleecing CarMax to the max with all of the issues because these things are so horribly unreliable. And well, that was 10 years ago. Nowadays, in 2017, this is a very reliable, solid vehicle, and I've had very few issues. But there is more reasons why we want to get rid of this car, and it's for mostly practical reasons, which we shall get into right now. In addition, we're going to take this to the Land Rover dealer, get it appraised for a trade-in, and we're going to drive a potential replacement candidate, a 2022 Range Rover Sport SVR. And it's a carbon edition, basically the king daddy of Range Rovers, but also the end of an era. Land Rover's making some really big changes, and one I'm not so sure about. But before we dive into my 2 years of Range Rover ownership, I'd like to thank King of Avalon for sponsoring today's video. King of Avalon is a medieval fantasy mobile strategy game inspired by King Arthur, whose descendants in England drive Range Rovers today. Haha! It is free to play and available in both the App Store and Google Play, and has been downloaded and loved by over 100 million players. Picture this. Your hometown has been destroyed by the Unmelted, a creature who attacks anything with warm blood. With the last hope, a dragon egg, you, the new lord, must gather allies, raise your dragon, and defend your enemies. And now Hollywood star Orlando Bloom has joined to help you. Some tips on how to win easily include summoning Orlando the Night Shard, a free legendary hero available only for a limited time. You can also make friends with players from across the globe and build alliances and fight enemies together. But be sure to deploy your troops freely and summon your dragon wisely to defeat the waves of Unmelted and win tower defense battles. So download King of Avalon right now using the link below or scan the QR code. Downloading the link also gives you the chance to win multiple Amazon gift cards for new players. Just use my creator code Hoovie's KOA to redeem a limited in-game pack. First come, first served. Stay active and see you in the game. So just to recap, 2 years ago I bought this Range Rover for my wife. I've surprised her with many cars over the years with Hoovie's Garage, some with bad results like the BMW M3, but some with good results like the SLK 55 AMG. But the car after that, the Mercedes E-Wagon, was sort of a bad result. It was something I wanted, not her. And like most people nowadays, she prefers an SUV. She was driving my Cayenne Turbo before that, the ML55 AMG, and she had a RAV4 for 4 years. And well, the E-Wagon, unfortunately, the rear room in it just wasn't there. E-Class wagons used to be so roomy, big, spacious wagons, sort of like this, but nowadays they're really cramped in the rear seat. Kind of strange. So I overcompensated for that mistake by buying a long wheelbase. You see the L here, Range Rover, which is just absolutely massive. You see this door here. It's huge, which gives you basically a limousine-like interior space to haul around a 2-year-old and a 9-year-old, and that's sort of turned into a problem, as the 2-year-old has discovered that he can fake cry to get what he wants or throw tantrums, the terrible twos. And with this big back seat, my wife cannot reach back to, say, give him a pouch. If he's dropped his toy on the floor, there's no reaching it. Basically, anything that happens in the back, say you're stopped at a light and you can sort of satisfy the kid, you have to stop, pull over in the parking lot, get out, and take care of him. So I actually got something that was way too massive for my wife to drive around. Now the new Land Rover long wheelbase, now they're 7-seaters, so it doesn't have this massive space, but now has a 3rd row seat, which makes a lot more sense than, well, this. But otherwise, she has absolutely loved the car. I mean, the interior on this thing is just absolutely gorgeous. The screens are not out of control on this thing yet. You still have mostly knobs to control a lot of things. And it has held up really well. The only issues with this car so far is a chip in the glass right here, which is sort of by the heads-up display. I haven't had that filled in yet, hoping it would crack so I could replace it, but that happened like a few months into ownership. And finally, after 2 years of driving, she just recently curbed a wheel. Not bad, but that's the very first time. I had actually bought the wheel protection package on this in the finance office. I was one of those suckers because she curbed wheels so much that I figured I would get my money's worth out of that. And then, of course, since I spend that money, she magically stops driving wheels into curbs. She did it with all the other cars before. But anyway, the only thing that we've had break on this car is one coolant line that sort of started bubbling. It was a little bit of a drip on the ground. It wasn't a big failure that left us on the side of the road, and it was a relatively easy fix. Otherwise, it has been all maintenance. I think there was one little clunk in the suspension that got fixed. Otherwise, all maintenance, all under warranty, and absolutely nothing has happened even remotely interesting. But the fact that it's been boring for videos and has too big of a backseat isn't the only reason why I want to get rid of it. It's also held its value so well, and it's currently sitting at 65,000 miles, which is about the sweet spot to where it's not too high of a mileage, where it really starts affecting the value. If she drives it for another year, she drives about 15,000 miles a year for a long commute with work. She'd be at 80,000 miles, and then 2 years, 95, and then, well, prices will start plummeting pretty quickly, but they're already gonna start plummeting pretty quickly since cars are starting to get back in full production again. The supply chain issues hopefully starting to get behind us and we have a supply of cars again, not to mention the shaky economy. So I kind of want to strike while the iron is hot with this car and trade it up for something else. I bought this thing for low mid 60s, I believe. Since I traded in the E-Class wagon, it was a little more complicated. So it's really held its value really well. A year ago, I could have sold it for more than what I paid for it, but wasn't ready to do that yet. But now I'm sort of ready to move on and surprise the wife with something else. And one contender, well, it's at the Land Rover dealership and it is gorgeous. So let's go check it out and see what they'll give me on this thing. Now, I love how comfortable this car is. The seats are much like an older vehicle with lots of cushioning, which was the big draw for me. But the biggest draw was the engine. The supercharged V8, 510, there it is, horsepower. Which, despite this thing being about the size of a Chevy Tahoe, it just rockets itself. I mean, it's incredible. I love that. Unfortunately, this engine is gone in the new Range Rover and it's going away in the Sport SVR. And what they replaced it with is, well, if you know your Range Rover history, you'll be surprised. You'll be very, very surprised. Now, I have another Range Rover with this engine, a 2011 Sport with the supercharged V8. It's actually at the Land Rover dealer as well, completely bricked right now. So we'll go visit that, and then we will go see the potential new purchase along with getting an appraisal on this. But I am definitely going to miss it. I would love it as a daily driver personally, but I get my wife having trouble reaching the kid, and parking is a little bit harder. And like I said, the value of this thing, it is starting to go downhill. So either I do it now or I drive this thing into the ground basically, or well, take a massive hit. So anyway, I think this is smart, but this is the dumbest automotive channel in all of YouTube. So take my advice with a grain of salt. In the back of the Land Rover dealership where all the dead ones are. And there it is. I think, yep. Yeah, there she is, listing to one side. Poor thing. I haven't seen this car for, well, about a month, but it's not their fault. They actually diagnosed it, figured out that it's a relay. They found a fried relay in this thing. Ordered it. It took about a week for that to come in. And then with the car's electrical problems, it kind of went dead, the battery out here. And, well, unfortunately, it's locked. And they discovered that I don't have the little key shank to unlock the car when the battery goes dead. So it's stuck. They have to order the new shank, the little key, the manual key, and that takes 7 to 10 days. And then maybe this thing will finally be licked. But this is a 2011 500 horsepower supercharged V8, the beginning of that marvelous V8. They did have the timing chain guide issues where they would throw all that, but this one, 106,000 miles so far, no noisy timing chains. So good news there, but by 2017, that's no longer an issue. And, well, the car they have up front for me, the 2022, it's the top of the mountain. Well, I just dropped off the keys to the trade-in, told them to be gentle. You know, there's only a few people watching if they want a lowball, which they won't. They said they want a car like that. They don't have many long wheelbases out here. A lot of used, but not a lot of new. Obviously, the new Range Rover is in huge demand. They're selling for way over their MSRP, like 50 grand plus. Same with other cars like the G-Wagon, the G63, like maybe $100,000 over its MSRP for a G63, which is absolutely insane. Meanwhile, look at this. 2022 Range Rover Sport SVR Carbon Edition, and well, they're not too proud of it. Right now it's pretty close to its MSRP in this beautiful metallic blue, and holy moly, I mean, this thing is just gorgeous. This is the end of the run for this era of sport, which really goes back to the one in the back. You know, there hasn't been a massive redesign in that 10-year span up until the one, well, that's coming out here shortly. And this one, well, it's just the best of the best. 575 horsepower, 175 mile an hour top speed. Oh, jeez, just look at that. And that's because they wanted to throw everything at this supercharged V8 under the hood, this Jaguar Land Rover V8, because, well, it's the end of it. Yeah, let's pop the hood here and just take one last gander at the end of the line. Is it covered in plastic? No, carbon fiber. I guess it is the Carbon series. That does look pretty darn good. So with the new Range Rover, I'm sorry to report that this engine is gone. They have replaced it with a BMW twin turbo V8 that you would find, say, in the M cars or the upper end. And well, I mean, it just makes sense. Most V8s are going away, so the fact that they're able to keep one is a good thing, and the fact that they're sharing platforms, well, that makes a lot of sense nowadays because people aren't investing a bunch of money in V8s, they're investing in battery technology and other smaller engines and hybrid systems that are the future. Developing new big V8s make no sense in this world of government mandates where everything's supposed to be all electric by the end of the decade, which doesn't seem possible. But still, you think that Land Rover would remember how sourcing BMW engines for their cars went 20 years ago with the BMW engines that would pop in these things left and right. And there are plenty of those 4.8s over at Johnny the Car Ninjas that have let go. So on the one hand, I'm bummed, but on the other hand, I'm sure it's a fantastic engine. I know they're going to be more powerful than this whenever they come out with an SVR, but you know, it's not the same. So really, that makes this SVR an instant classic. And this Carbon series, well, it's one of the most special ones, which is why, well, I'm really interested in it. Let's go ahead and start it up. Sounds very similar to the wife's Land Rover. A little more exhaust though. Wowza. Okay, test drive time. Well, I'm already confused because I need to turn on the climate control, and it's a screen. Okay, a screen that controls a knob. So yeah, we're getting into the world of screens everywhere, which I'm kind of a dinosaur and avoid that kind of stuff, but oh, okay. We've got the power though. Really a big thank you to Walzer for allowing me to film all of this process, you know, buying a car. And you know, a lot of dealers would probably like to keep the man behind the curtain and all that stuff, and they're pretty upfront about how things go down there. And they do have a fine selection of new and especially used Range Rovers. There's a lot of them out there, including a 17 autobiography long wheelbase, same year as mine, but an autobiography, so the fancy one. Mine will be a lower price point, but back to this thing. Wow. I mean, the only thing other than the overload of screens that I'm seeing as a downside to the old car is the seats. They just aren't as comfortable. This is sort of a sport version, so they're more sport buckets, but still not bad compared to most modern cars. This is still a comfortable, relatively cushy seat with a beautiful design. The carbon fiber everywhere certainly looks nice. And, well, there, I can reach the kid. All right. But now we're in the highway entrance, so let's see what 575 horsepower will do. Okay. Oh, and the burble when it changes gears. Wowza. Alrighty then. You cannot get that noise with anything with twin turbos on it, unfortunately. Same with, say, Ferrari, where they went from the 458 to the 488 with the twin turbos. They didn't sound as good. Even though it's more power and better performance, it just doesn't have the same sound and feel, unfortunately. But it makes a lot of sense. You get more power, performance, and better emissions, which that's getting, you know, increasingly strict. Boy, this thing's really tight too. For a big SUV, wow. Okie dokie. That long wheelbase Range Rover is definitely kind of lazy yachty. This thing is certainly not. Wowza. Okay then, one last little romp here. That's awesome. I mean, why are people paying 100 grand over for a G63 when you can get this that's already a lower MSRP and not jacked up to the moon? Like $150,000 is a lot of money, but in comparison to a lot of other, well, supercar SUVs, whatever you call them, it's one of the best values, and it's one of the best looking, best feeling cars. I really think this era of the last 10 years or so going into the end of this decade is going to be a lot like the muscle car era of the 60s that ended abruptly in 1971, thanks to insurance and government mandates that really choked down the muscle cars to just barely any power, which, well, we're sort of seeing that now where we're forcing to hybrids and electrics to make fuel economy mandates, emission mandates in Europe, not just the United States. So we really are at this moment living in the best era to be a car guy, and a lot of things like the GT500 by Mustang, say the Lamborghini Aventador with its V12, it's all sort of the last of the dinosaurs before they go hybrid, before they go V6, before whatever else happens in the future. The Dodge Challenger Hellcat going away for a Huracan, bye-bye Hemi, hello twin turbo inline six. We are living in the end times here when it comes to performance over everything else, and Land Rover, like so many other makes, they're going out with a bang on this thing. Oop. Oh, the start-stop thing. Oh, we gotta kill that. It's so off-putting every time I think the car's gonna break because I live in hoopties for so long, but it's just saving gas. Now let's use the gas. Now normally I wouldn't buy new. I did with the GT500, and other than that, there hasn't been a new car in 10 years, but this thing is so special, so well-spec'd that I'm seriously interested. So we'll see what Walzer has to say, and then I have some thinking to do. This is for the wife, it's not for me, so I have to consider that as well. All right, we're back. There's one of those fancy G-Wagons. Looks like they moved the long wheelbase over for a trade bid. This is a no haggle dealership, so there's no high pressure face-off or whatever with a salesman and a manager, so just go see what they have to say. Fingers crossed. Well, I have to say, Jaguar Land Rover of Wichita really knocked it out of the park here when it comes, well, to all of this. I mean, not only are they not marking the hell out of something offensively, a new car that's really in demand. Now, some cars they absolutely have to, given how hard they are to get, and why would you sell somebody a car at MSRP and then let them flip it for $100,000+? But in this case, they were very generous. And if I do trade it in, basically, I've driven this car for 2 years, doubled the miles on it, bought it with 37,000, now it has like 65,000 miles on it, and barely had any depreciation at all. This will be the only time in history probably where something like that on a luxury SUV ever happens. But I did do what I was supposed to do. I didn't buy brand new. I bought a few years old, certified pre-owned, and now I'm trading it in before it gets heavily depreciated. So either way, I think I will be selling this car back to Jaguar Land Rover of Wichita. But as for the SVR, it's very, very tempting. I almost said yes right there because it made sense. It's just so cool, so amazing. But there is one other hoopty that I want to look at, so just wait a few days. And in the meantime, thank you so much for watching.